Dr. Wallach is an expert on nutrition and longevity and is the famed author of the audio message, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, which has been heard by more than 50 million people. Get ready to learn and to laugh as Dr. Wallach shares some important facts that could very well save your life. And now, here is Dr. Joel Wallach.
Since most of you heard the tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, I don't have to give a lot of introduction to myself other than to remind you the thing that makes my view different on health, I think, is that I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician. And in veterinary medicine, we don't have health insurance for animals like we do people. And if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for animals or livestock, it'd be sticker shock for you. Your hamburger would cost you $275 a pound. A boneless, skinless chicken breast would be $450 a pound. A dozen eggs would be $50 just to pay for the health care. So we learned a long time ago in the animal industry that we could keep the price of animal products such as meat and dairy and poultry and eggs down to where the average American could afford to eat them every day simply by eliminating health care cost. We do this in animals with simple little nutritional formulas, and that's why we have mouse pellets and rat pellets and hamster pellets and gerbil pellets and guinea pig pellets and rabbit pellets. We have canned and dried dog and cat food. We have pig pellets and sheep pellets and horse pellets and calf pellets and dairy pellets and ferret pellets and duck pellets and turkey pellets and trout pellets and catfish pellets and monkey pellets and pigeon pellets. I mean, every kind of animal you can think of that's been domesticated or used as a pet or a laboratory animal, we have pellets for. And the reason why we put animal feeds or animal rations into a pelletized form is so that every mouthful is perfect. Even the stupidest animal in the group gets a perfect diet. They can't sort through and just eat only the sunflower seeds or the raisins. Every mouthful is perfect. And we do that to standardize production. And it's been a real blessing for the agricultural industry. We were so successful that over the last 75 years, we were able to eliminate 900 different diseases. We've doubled and tripled lifespans of animals with these simple little nutritional formulas. And as a veterinarian, it always was kind of interesting to me that we didn't use that same technology for people. We only spent $100 billion figuring all this out for animals over a 75-year period, which is nothing, as you will see tonight, compared to what we spend for human health on a yearly basis. So it's a pittance to eliminate 900 different diseases in animals. Well, one of the things, before I became a physician, I was involved with a big research project with Marlon Perkins from the old Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom show. How many remember Marlon Perkins? Great gentleman. And I was really, really honored that he would think of me as a wildlife pathologist. I was in Africa actually doing conservation work, and he sent me a telegram, invited me back to the States in the mid-'60s because he had gotten a $7.5 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. And this was to study pollution in the environment and the world ecology. And my job on the project was to do autopsies of animals that died of natural causes in the big zoos around the United States, because big zoos tended to be associated with big cities. And if there was any pollution problems going on in the cities, there was bound to be an animal in the zoo population that would be sensitive to the pollution. And we could use that animal much like the old coal miners used to use canaries. You know, they'd take the canary down to the mine, and if a little gas or methane would leak into the mine, the canaries were much more sensitive than the men, and they would drop off the perch and die long before the men were in danger of blowing up or suffocating. So that was the purpose of the study. Well, to make a long story short, over some years I had done 17,500 autopsies on over 454 species of animals and 3,000 human beings for comparison. And what I learned, ladies and gentlemen, was that every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. I'm going to repeat that because that's a very profound observation. Every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. And of course, that was poo-pooed by many medical experts back then, because how could anybody die of a nutritional disease in America, right? There's no evidence to support the claim that we can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals. Raise your hand if you ever heard some version of that. No evidence to support the claim you can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals. Doctors say that, experts say that, professors say it, bureaucrats say that, everybody says that. Well, how many of you have ever heard of scurvy? Raise your hand. Sure, you know you can prevent and cure scurvy with vitamin C? How many of you have heard of rickets? Raise your hand. You know you can prevent and cure rickets with vitamin D? How many of you have heard of goiter? Raise your hand. You know you can prevent and cure goiter with iodine and copper and selenium? How many of you have heard of anemia? Raise your hand. Golly gee, you know you can prevent and cure anemia with iron and copper and folic acid and vitamin B12? And what about things like beriberi with congestive heart failure. You know you can prevent and cure that with thiamine or vitamin B1. And what about pellagra with all the emotional stuff and schizophrenia and diarrhea and all the skin diseases that go along with pellagra? You can prevent and cure that with vitamin B3 or niacin. And all the essential nutrients are called essential nutrients because if you don't have enough, you get diseases. If you get the disease, you take the nutrient, it goes away. So any doctor, any expert, any bureaucrat, any professor, anybody who says there's no evidence to support the claim you can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals is a fool. And you don't want to have a fool for a doctor. That's the last person you want to have as a fool as a doctor, right? Diabetes. An epidemic disease in the United States. There's 1 million new cases of diabetes every year. There's 32 million diabetics as we speak right now in America. 30 million of the 32 million diabetics are adult-onset type 2 diabetics. They make up the bulk of the diabetic population. And adult-onset type 2 diabetics make more insulin than non-diabetics. There's not an insulin problem with them. And usually if you're asking about insulin, say, well, I've got insulin. How can I be a diabetic? And so doctors say, well, you've got insulin-resistant diabetes. It's not working. The reason why it's not working is you're deficient in 2 trace minerals, chromium and vanadium, and their cofactors necessary for them to work, which are required by your insulin to work in your body. You can make tons of insulin, but if you don't have those trace minerals, your insulin's not going to work. We learned in 1957 that we could prevent and cure adult-onset type 2 diabetes in laboratory animals, pet animals, and farm animals by giving them these 2 trace minerals and their cofactors. This lay dormant for 20 years in human medicine until 1977 when they found out that they could give intravenous chromium and vanadium and their cofactors to people who had diabetes, and they were unconscious from head injuries. They were in a coma. And they were miraculously cured by giving them intravenously these trace minerals and their cofactors. Now you can't say that, oh, well, they just believed that they were going to get cured because they were going to get cured because they're in a coma. They didn't know what was going on. Now, how come your doctor doesn't tell you this stuff? I mean, it's been proven over and over and over in animals. It's been proven over and over and over in people. It's been published in every big medical journal in America and in the world. It sort of comes through every couple of years as renewed, people look at it. It's not like it's a mystery. Every doctor knows this. Why don't doctors tell you this? Well, if a doctor took the less than 2 minutes that I just shared with you, this information, he might get $80 for a long visit, an extended visit, instead of $50 for a standard visit. Make an extra $30. According to the GAO, the General Accounting Office, which is the budget watchdog for the U.S. Congress, your doctor makes, over the 25 to 40 years a diabetic lives after diagnosis, your doctor makes $750,000 for every diabetic patient. So why would he take $30 when he can make $750,000? And most people say, well, my doctor belongs to my church. I got to believe in him. Well, don't let that protect you. Even members of the mafia go to church, right? So I wouldn't bet on that one. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 100 years ago, Americans were eating a half a pound of sugar per person per year. Half a pound of sugar per person per year. Today, 100 years later, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Americans are eating 157 pounds of sugar per person per year, or now we're eating a half a pound a day. So in 100 years, we've gone from a half a pound of sugar per person per year to a half a pound of sugar per person per day. That, plus the deficiency of these nutrients in our food, has resulted in this epidemic of diabetes. Do you think our genetics has changed that much? I don't think so. If you look in the book Rare Earths Forbidden Cures, one of our books, the guy who's doing all this study on these 2 trace minerals back in the 1950s, actually, Dr. Walter Mertz, went back into the 1940s and began to look at chromium levels in American blood, and he found out there was a big range in 1948, micrograms per liter of parts per billion, 28 to 1,000. In 1971, it dropped to 13. In 72, it dropped to 10. In 73, our chromium levels in our blood dropped to 4.7 to 5.1. In 74, it dropped to 0.73 to 1.6. In 78, it dropped to 0.16. Is it going up or down? It's dropping like a rock. Well, in 1980, it went up 3 times over 1978 values to 0.43. Why did that happen? Remember 1977? They were publishing all these papers on how chromium and vanadium was good for you. And so everybody was taking chromium and vanadium. They were running to health food stores and taking it. And so everybody's blood levels of chromium and vanadium went up. But because they couldn't cure diabetes with chromium and vanadium without all those other cofactors, In 1985, it went back down to 0.13 because people got frustrated because it wouldn't work if you just use those two trace minerals without the other cofactors. So between not having enough of these nutrients, the chromium and vanadium, and their cofactors in my food anymore, and eating all this sugar, more sugar, less chromium, vanadium, we have an epidemic. We have an epidemic of adult onset type 2 diabetes. The last one we're going to talk about is arthritis and osteoporosis. Arthritis and osteoporosis. According to the Center for Disease Control, 85% of all Americans over the age of 50 already have arthritis and osteoporosis of one type or another, or to one degree or another. There's not a single medical treatment designed to prevent or fix it. Aspirin, Celebrex, Vioxx, Tylenol, ibuprofen, Advil, Aleve, methotrexate, gold shots, prednisone, cortisone. None of those prevent or cure osteoporosis and arthritis. They all have terrible side effects, many of which are life-threatening. And what makes this really, really, really bad, ladies and gentlemen, we learned how to prevent and cure osteoporosis and arthritis in animals over 300 years ago. Now, we didn't know all the biochemical reasons why these approaches worked, but we knew in the last 75 years the biochemical reasons why these little nutritional formulas worked. But we knew how to prevent and cure osteoporosis and arthritis in animals for over 300 years, in some societies, 1,000 years. And your doctor is still trying to just give you painkillers and doing surgery. How many of you heard of arthroscopic surgery of the knee for arthritis? Yeah, it's a very common procedure now. This came out in July of 2002. Arthroscopic knee surgery for arthritis is a worthless procedure. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. How many of you know somebody who's had arthroscopic surgery of the knee? Yeah. Well, if you have arthroscopic surgery of the knee for arthritis, that doesn't deal with the systemic problem that's going on, right? Just one little knee. And of course, doctors in 2001, and there's only like maybe 5,000 doctors out of the 1 million doctors who do this procedure, their income for that one procedure in 2001 was $1.5 billion. Now, do you think they'll ever give up that procedure? No. It's been proven to be worthless, published in the New England Journal of Medicine as a worthless procedure. When there are cures available, so they're not going to use the nutritional approach. They're not going to use the nutritional approach. They're going to use arthroscopic surgery of the knee because that's worth $1.5 billion to them. And so you have to be smart enough. When your doctor says, look, you got bone-to-bone arthritis of your knee. In the old days, we'd have to go right to the joint replacement surgery. But right now, we've got arthroscopic surgery of the knee, and we can take out those little floating bits of bone and cartilage. And then when that doesn't work anymore, we'll eventually have to go to the joint replacement surgery. But right now, we might be able to preserve your knee for a year or two. You have to be strong enough to say, look, doc, you're a quack. How many people did you kill last month? The New England Journal of Medicine. The New England Journal of Medicine. July 2002 said this procedure is worthless. Now, we've been friends for a long time. We belong to the same church, and you're coming to me with a worthless procedure? I don't think I'm going to visit you anymore. You have to rebel sometime. When they keep taking advantage of you to milk your insurance policy and milk your wallet, when do you rebel? You rebel when you realize that your doctor is only looking at you as a source of income. If you follow your doctor's advice when you have osteoporosis and arthritis, you're going to wind up like this. Yahoo! Now, whether you believe it or not, how many of you have ever heard that osteoporosis is primarily a postmenopausal woman's problem? Whether you believe it or not, how many of you have heard that? Sure, everybody knows. Oprah, your doctor, the government, everybody knows that osteoporosis is primarily a postmenopausal woman's problem. Well, we knew 100 years ago that osteoporosis actually occurred equally in both men and women. It only became a postmenopausal woman's problem in 1958 when they came out with HRT. Because can you justify treating osteoporosis and preventing osteoporosis with estrogen if both men and women get it at the same rate? No, you couldn't. Can you imagine a red-blooded American man, a red-blooded Idahoan, going to his doctor and say, okay, doc, I've got that osteoporosis stuff. I want you to shoot me up with that estrogen. I've had estrogen today. They're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. People tend to be basically smart, right? Well, this came out in November of 2001. Osteoporosis strikes both sexes equally. Men are as likely as women to suffer from osteoporosis. The surprise findings. Well, why was this a surprise finding? Well, because all the doctors who did that study only graduated after the 1958 time period, and the truth they were taught was that osteoporosis occurs primarily in postmenopausal women. Results turn the tables on the belief that women are the prime victims of the condition. The findings of the Canadian Multi-Center Osteoporosis Study, a program involving almost 10,000 participants in 9 centers, will almost certainly change the way that medical professionals deal with unexplained bone fractures in men and the way education about the condition is handled. Now raise your hand, gentlemen, if you have received a direct communication from your medical doctor, either an email, a postcard, a phone call, saying, look, come on in. I've just learned that osteoporosis occurs equally in both men and women. I'm so excited about this because I can help you before something bad happens. Come on in, we'll do a bone density test. How many of you men have gotten that communication from your medical doctors? Look at that. None. As I traveled around the world, 18 countries in the last 3 years, not a single man has raised their hand. Now you say, well, why would that be? Why wouldn't doctors want to tell their men patients? You'd think they'd be excited. If they're altruistic and they're out there to help you, they'd be wanting to give you this information, right? Well, guess what would happen? Every woman would immediately stop using HRT. And they're making so much money from the kickbacks and writing the prescriptions from HRT, they're afraid to rock the boat. They don't want to start anything that's going to rock the boat. So any doctor who today continues to write prescriptions for women for HRT should be put in jail for 25 years of life without possibility of parole. And that would be the kindest of treatments that I would figure for them. Ladies, when your doctor comes to you and says, I want you to take estrogen for osteoporosis, you say, Doc, you take it for 25 years. And then, if it works, I'll take it. See what he says. One of the other things you have to do besides taking all the raw materials to rebuild your bone and cartilage and ligaments and tendons and connective tissue is to give up carbonated drinks. Carbonated drinks are the single greatest contributor to osteoporosis and arthritis and fractures of the bone. They interfere with the absorption of nutrients, especially minerals, digesting protein. This actually, the original study was done 10 years before this at the Harvard Nurses Health Study, 90,000 nurses, 20 years of data, and these were all nurses over age 35. They found out that the nurses drinking carbonated drinks, soft drinks, even diet drinks, instead of water during the day, had a 500% increase in risk of osteoporosis and fractures over the water drinking group. So they went and did the study in junior high school girls, 460 junior high school girls in 9th and 10th grade. They found out that the same thing was exactly true for them. Why did they only look at nurses and girls? Because they believed it's primarily a woman's disease. But believe me, it occurs in boys too. So if you have young athletes, whether they're girls or boys, if you have osteoporosis in your family or arthritis, if you have it or don't want to get it, you got to give up carbonated drinks. Doctors should be telling you this every time you walk in the door. You got to give up carbonated drinks. I'll answer questions in just a moment. I just want to remind you that if you don't take care of your own destiny, if you don't take hold of things and take control of your own destiny, life is going to take care of your destiny for you, and usually it's not very nice. And so if you take control and rebel a little bit, be one of those mean, feisty little people that defy their doctor, but you have to do it with education. You just can't do something bad. You have to know what you're doing, educate yourself, and the odds are you're going to save yourselves an enormous amount of unnecessary misery. You're going to save yourselves a gob of money, and you're going to add many, many, many healthful years to your life. It will definitely help you to educate yourself. Education is power. Education with action is superpower. Don't let somebody else, even a doctor, determine your future. You've got to make those determinations yourself.